All right. Hello, folks. I was just about to begin a new build project that I saw this diorama on the corner, and I realized I've made some promises on Facebook and other social media platforms to answer questions people had about how I made certain features in this diorama and reveal trade secrets. So I decided instead of typing forever, I make my first YouTube video ever, and here we are. So let me just turn on the diorama so you can see what's happening here. If you haven't seen this before, it's basically a 1/20th scale scratch build, full scratch build diorama, and it uses two figures from the Machine and Krieger universe, and I'll talk about those soon. But let's just first talk about the one thing that people have asked about the most, and that is the screen. So this screen is, I started programming my own screen and screen animations and putting them into 0.96-inch diagonal OLED displays using Arduinos. And I didn't like how simple they were, so I started Google searching and looking online to look for different animations, and I found this company called Brick Stuff. Brick, like bricks in the wall, and stuff, all one word, Brick Stuff. And they make their own 0.96 high resolution displays, OLED displays, and they make these animations and they put them on an SD card that's attached to the display. So I purchased one of them and built a monitor around it. As you can see here, I scratch built all this stuff and put the display in there and ran the wires through the screen, through the monitor, through the table, to the ground, and to an Arduino that I will show you later. So it's connected to 5-volt DC power source. I'll show it to you. It's in this box underneath. So I can't take any credit for this wonderful animation. I purchased it, then I built a monitor around it. The keyboard and all that stuff was basically carved out of sheets of styrene, and with the chisels. So this is a Machine and Krieger 1/20th scale figure, and I scratch built a lot of stuff around this. I basically redesigned the entire arm mechanism and put a couple of gear down DC motors inside the scanning mechanism to rotate the head of the scanner, and a little crank shaft mechanism over there. There's basically a gear motor inside this box that's rotating the arm. I changed the joint mechanism of the arm. I basically scratch built the whole thing to cheat a little bit and give it an extra few degrees of freedom. Instead of a regular elbow joint, I use the ball and socket joint there, and I also use the same ball and socket joint on the shoulder. I think these are RC parts, and I use the M2 socket head cap screw to actually tie everything together, and there's a nut on the other side of the elbow that holds everything together. Vaseline in the joints, the shaft rotates the arm, and it makes it look like he's cranking. So that's that. And let me see at the back, you can see some paintwork going on, some stickers, decals. The floors here were done with one of my favorite CAD softwares, and what I do is that I design the floors and the patterns, and then I go ahead and I cut them out either by hand or using this Cricut cutter that I have. This, if you don't know what a Cricut cutter is, it's basically an X-Acto knife on a 3-axis stage. It goes in X, Y, and Z for pressure. Look it up, Cricut cutter. It's a nice little tool. If you don't have time to cut all these things by hand, you can cut them using the cutter. A lot of these are actually done by hand, except a few things like these over here and that over there were done. This area over here on the floor were done with my Cricut cutter, and I designed the 2D pattern in CAD, and I fed it as an image file to the cutter, and the cutter did the rest of the work, and I painted it afterwards. Exclusively, my painting was done using Alclad and Mission Model paints. I love Mission Model paints. They're durable, they're amazing. And Alclad, of course, you might be able to beat the shine now with some other paints, but I love Alclad, and I use that for the flooring, some of the metal parts. Everything else on the back, the wall pieces over there, they're all scratch built, cut out of sheets of styrene. The tubes were bent using candle and lighters and heating up the styrene tubes and bending them painstakingly. Everything here was either taken from some of their kits, the skeleton head and the handle over there, and but the wires were handmade. Everything else was handmade. These monitors here that they're placed on joints, they're actually moved. They were handmade. Everything else was scratch built. There's a perspective hallway, if you can see. The perspective is not correct. I just did it for fun as a last minute thing, but it kind of gives you that feeling of depth in that 1.5, 2 inch space that we have in this wall. And I kind of really like that one. Let me see what else is there. Let's talk about the insides. So let me turn this off. Let me show you the back, by the way. There's a bunch of switches in there, and you label them correctly. And there's a fan, and there's the rain machine, and there's a bunch of LEDs. And you turn the whole thing off, and what you do is you take out the back this way. Everything is connected with magnets. And again, sorry if the zoom is not working for me. I'm trying to show you everything, but for my first video, I think this is going wonderfully. So yeah, magnet aligns everything. And there are RJ connectors. I love RJ connectors because they're small and they fit in everything. And this thing is just what I call a rain machine. It's just an aquarium pump. It's a 1/16 diameter silicon tubing. The pump pumps the water, and use filtered water so you don't get spots. Pumps the water through the silicon tubing, and it drops it on top of a fan. And the fan is stationed at 45 degrees to the screen, so mechanically sprays the droplets to the screen, makes it look like it's raining. The higher the RPM of the fan, the smaller the droplets. It didn't bother me that the droplets were a little bit too big and they were clumping up at the screen. I could have played with the surface tension and mixing alcohol with water and a couple of other things to reduce the surface tension, using hydrophobic spray on the back of the screen to make it, make the droplets fall faster and not stick to the screen as much. But I kind of liked it. I liked how big the droplets were. It didn't bother me. I can suspend belief, and it's not supposed to be earth anyways. So this box is just a little pencil holder that I made, and I used, I think, glue gun to seal it in, and some silicon gun. Put a battery, silicon glue, and put a battery in there. There was a Fiji water that I chopped off and put the cap over there so I can unscrew this and empty the water and put it back in again so it dries up and it doesn't rot. I just put water in there to show you guys. So this thing is lined with magnets, and it lines itself up in there and stays in there. You connect the wires, and it runs with a switch. So there. And so let's see what else is left. Let's talk about, actually, let me remove this so I can talk to you about the underneath part. So underneath this thing is a universe unto its own. And so what's going on here is there are a lot of electronics that are running here, but are basically running Arduinos with some potentiometers, switches. The potentiometers control the voltage. You change the brightness of the LEDs or the rotation speeds of the gear motors. Even though I had gear down motors, the rotations were a little bit too high for me, so I used potentiometers to dial them in. If you don't know what potentiometers are, these are variable resistors. Basically, you turn a knob and you change the resistance so that you change the amount of power that's going to the LED or to your load, to your motor, and it can change its rotation speed or its brightness, for example. So look them up if you don't know what those are. Custom cables, custom-made cables. These things, I got them from a place called Daiso Japan. And Daiso Japan is a dollar store, Japanese dollar store in California. And they provide these wonderful upscaling from 3 volts to 5 volt pieces that I purchased, and I put batteries in them. I have a lot of, I made this thing very modular because I wanted every piece to be separate. So I'm using a bunch of batteries. I had to solder my own resistors for some of the other parts, and got some PCB boards from Amazon, and made them work. again, there's a lot of this is just a fun project. I wasn't really making a research project out of it. I was trying to make something quick and enjoyable. So I jumbled a bunch of things together. The base is connected with magnets. I love magnets. They self-align and line up everything, and holds everything together so you can remove it. There's a little case for this that I have that this thing fits inside, and it's a plexiglass box case. Um, and let me see what else is left. I think that's it. There's nothing else to tell. I told you all the secrets, I think. Yeah. So, anyways, I hope I answered all your questions. Here it is for my first video on YouTube. If you have other questions, please ask in the comments. Shoot me a private message on Facebook or wherever I tend to put this video. And thanks for watching.